You may have noticed that we love bad games on this channel. Whether they are so bad they're good or just plain awful, we can't help but be fascinated by the worst that the medium has to offer. And yet, allow me to blow your mind, we enjoy good games as well. Oh yes, it's true, and we thought we'd take a trip through history today to celebrate the absolute cream of the crop from the dawn of this millennium, so shield your eyes, folks. Velour tracksuits and frosted tips abound. 2000 was the year of the Millennium Dome, Brad and Jen, Big Brother, and well, at least the games were good, so let's focus on those. As always, titles with fewer than 7 reviews were omitted, leaving us with the 10 highest scoring games of the year according to Metacritic. And while everyone is going to have their own personal opinions with a list like this, it's not too difficult to agree that the critics knew quality when they saw it. I'm Ben from TripleJump, and here are the 10 best reviewed games of 2000. Number 10. SSX, PlayStation 2. 93%. Snowboarding masterpiece SSX wowed players and critics alike with its vast courses, awesome multiplayer modes, and overall ability to make you feel like an absolute adrenaline-fueled badass. To be honest, it's shocking how diverse the 8 courses are, particularly when you consider the hardware. EA managed to cram a mountain of sheer epicness onto the disc, I'm sorry. It isn't just snowy slope followed by snowy slope. The designers clearly let their imaginations run wild, and it leads to a brilliantly fun experience. Tracks range from frosty cities to a giant pinball machine to an iceberg that casually floats in a Hawaiian harbor. Also, there was a surprising amount of replayability. It wasn't just a matter of simply sliding from the top to the bottom of the course. No siree, there are many hidden shortcuts to discover, as well as a plethora of stunts and tricks to master as you plummet down the tracks at breakneck speed. Terrific soundtrack, slick gameplay, rewarding progression. SSX really stomped the landing on this one. Number 9. Resident Evil Code Veronica, Dreamcast, 94%. This installment in the Resident Evil franchise, in hindsight, could be seen as the awkward middle child. It existed in the evolutionary transition between its first shuffling steps on the PlayStation and the more action-y titles of later years. It was the first one to forego those pre-rendered backgrounds, yet still kept an undead death grip on semi-fixed camera angles and stiff controls. And yet, all of it works so well that it never feels like the half step forward it seems to be. It's still one of the best games in the entire series, remembered fondly by pretty much anyone who isn't Capcom. The overall presentation is remarkable, from visuals, music, and sound to the all-important narrative progression. And speaking of the story, it's got as many twists and turns as a DNA strand that's undergone some serious mutations in an Umbrella laboratory. Somehow it manages to be both spooky and beautiful in a way that only Morticia Addams can surpass. It is truly a testament to the Dreamcast's reputation as home to unforgettable titles, and it is a must-play for anyone even remotely appreciative of the iconic survival horror series. Frankly, it's so good, it's scary. Number 8. Jet Set Radio, Dreamcast, 94%. If there's one thing you can say about the TripleJump team, it's that we're pretty dang street, in italics. You know, really hippity happening folks over here. So it almost seems like a game about rollerblading street gangs sticking it to the man via the rad medium of spray painting was basically made for us. That's essentially my typical Sunday afternoon. There were some absolute gems that released in 2000. That's sort of the point of this list if you've forgotten. But Jet Set Radio, or Jet Grind Radio if you want to get American and confusing about this, was arguably the most original and distinct title of the entire year. First and foremost, the visuals were ridiculously fresh, and the cell shading worked darn well with regards to gameplay and narrative. But it didn't just look good, it played great. The controls were intuitive, the soundtrack was banging, and the level design was just plain awesome. Overall, it delivered both style and substance in an innovative package, resulting in a great gaming experience. It may have lost a few points for some dodgy camera positioning, but that's definitely not enough to stop Metacritic from stamping it with its gold seal of approval, the Must Play award. Number 7. Chrono Cross, PlayStation, 94%. Chrono Cross has an undeniably prestigious pedigree. After all, the storyline was developed by none other than the creator of Chrono Trigger and Xenogears. It boasted multiple scenarios linked via an ambitious core story thread and numerous endings that could result in entirely new adventures for each playthrough. Although it may not have had the worldwide popularity of the Final Fantasy franchise, many players and critics can agree that both Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross are among the best RPGs of all time. Square took extra care to ensure that its 40+ playable characters all possessed different characteristics, accents, and speech patterns, which really goes to show that nothing was given the cookie-cutter treatment here. Instead, the entire thing is crafted with passion and detail, suitably earning it high acclaim across the board. The stellar graphics, music, gameplay, and storyline unsurprisingly cemented Chrono Cross in the tapestry of RPG history. It truly lived up to the expectations of its celebrated predecessor and, in some ways, even surpassed them. Number 6. Final Fantasy IX. PlayStation, 94%. Boy, the year 2000 was a great time for RPGs. In the last Final Fantasy for the original PlayStation, the series returned to its pure fantasy roots while also adding features such as the active time event system and new minigames. It's a quite delightful adventure that paid homage to the series' origins in a way that doesn't seem cheap or cash grabby, though it is nowadays often overshadowed by the Final Fantasy VII versus Final Fantasy VIII arguments that pervade Reddit like a poison status effect. Final Fantasy IX, however, holds its own in more ways than one. The tactical nature of the battles is particularly satisfying, and the learning curve is much more natural than some of the other titles in this franchise. Although there's a definite dark fantasy vibe, there's also tons of humor that stops things from getting too dour. The eclectic characters are likable, engaging, and sympathetic, traits which Square cleverly enhanced via the combination of a chibi-esque art style and the active time event system that explored their feelings, motivations, and emotions. This one really revived the ambience of the older FF installments in the best way possible. Didn't even need a Phoenix down to do it either, which is, that's a clever Final Fantasy joke for you there. Number 5. Baldur's Gate 2 Shadows of Arm. PC, 95%. Don't be fooled by the title. We know that sounds like the noise you make when considering the risk-reward ratio of ordering a Domino's, but Baldur's Gate 2 Shadows of Arm garnered universal acclaim for, among other things, its stunning vastness, outstanding writing, and gorgeous graphics. Right out of the gate. You get it? It improved upon its forerunner in almost every way, delivering a fantasy RPG that was remarkably polished and utterly entrancing. Some may criticize its length or complain that it was somewhat thin, but overall it provided enhanced combat, great world building, and a thoughtful narrative. Hell, even the side quests were minor epics on their own merit. It was clearly crafted to be, at the time, the ultimate advanced Dungeons & Dragons role-playing experience. It boasts the strongest adversaries, the most enthralling artifacts, way more spells, countless characters, and detailed settings that truly establish the foundations of the game's universe. In the end, BioWare didn't even need to cast Charmed Person for players to succumb to this epic RPG experience. They just fell in love with it anyway. Aww. Number 4. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Nintendo 64. 95%. What can we say? Majora's Mask is famously deemed one of the best games of all time, so there's no surprise that it's here on this list. Although we are a little surprised that it didn't hit the top 3 for the year 2000. You'll just have to wait and see what pipped it to the post in 2K's knockout lineup. The concept may be simple, you've got 3 days to save the world, no pressure, but it's also handled and executed in a way that's arguably never been equaled before or since. Even down to a restrictive save system, players are both on the edge of their seats and reassured by the semblance of control over the passage of time. It's perfectly balanced in its ability to push the player forward while also letting them relish the experience. Nothing is rushed, everything is savoured without the risk of it going stale, and yet it still demands both attention and affection, and rightly so. It is artfully realised and designed in a way that makes it a resolutely iconic facet of gaming history. Honestly, there's just no masking its brilliance. Number 3. NFL 2K1 Dreamcast, 97%. While NFL 2K was deemed to be an incredible installment of the franchise, NFL 2K1 took the ball and ran with it. It improved on an already renowned title and delivered something that legitimately rocked the world of sports gaming. NFL 2K1 was far more refined, balanced, and complete than it had any right to be. It even introduced online gameplay capabilities that allowed players to face off with other sports fans over the internet, as well as download team roster updates all throughout the season. We are still talking about a console game in 2000, by the way. And while the introduction of online playability was huge, fans of the series couldn't overlook the marked improvements in AI, gameplay, and controls. In addition, although the graphics looked near identical to those of its predecessor, enhancements such as an animated crowd, light reflections on players' helmets, and new motion-captured animations gave this installment all the edge it needed to score a touchdown in the eyes of critics and fans alike. Sports, 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 yay. Number 2. Perfect Dark. Nintendo 64, 97%. Near the end of the Nintendo 64's 5-year life cycle and 3 years after the release of a little old game you might have heard of called GoldenEye 007, developer Rare returned to the scene with the masterpiece that was Perfect Dark. Most fans consider this to be a sequel to GoldenEye in everything but the license, due to it building on its predecessor's foundations in every manner possible. There were more weapons, more multiplayer arenas, more levels, more. There was more! The AI was markedly improved, and the storyline of the single-player campaign practically glues gamers to the screen. That being said, it wasn't a blatant clone of the beloved GoldenEye, it was an evolution. While it ran on an enhanced version of the original Bond engine and admittedly featured a lot in common with the older title, Rare artfully established a video game that blew players away with its dedication to delivering the best experience possible. An enhanced polygon count and crisper textures provided dramatic cutscenes, the multiplayer mode is downright amazing, and it has more optional content than you can shake a CC-13 at. Turns out that Perfect Dark lived up to its name after all. Number 1. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Dreamcast, 97%, and PlayStation, 98%. It's not often that a game ties for the number 1 spot with itself. Yes, both versions of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 scored at the very top of games released in 2000. A surprise, but a welcome one. When a platform's days are numbered, we can usually expect developers to throw some disappointing shovelware on the table in the hopes that the measly scraps will tide us over until the release of something more substantial in the next generation. However, when Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 kick-flipped onto the scene, the PS1's mournful swan song was epically remixed by the likes of Papa Roach and Anthrax, earning overwhelmingly positive reviews across the board. Not only was it the highest scoring game for the year 2000, but this beloved installment of the Tony Hawk's franchise is still renowned as one of the best games of all time, currently sitting comfortably within Metacritic's top 10 video games ever. If the first Pro Skater was tight, this one is damn near vacuum fitted. The levels were grander, the trick catalogue was overflowing with rad stunts, and the gameplay has been polished more than your grandma's silverware. Neversoft truly pushed the hardware of both systems for all they were worth, and as a result produced a fantastic experience that doesn't require nostalgia goggles to be fully appreciated even today.